Hi BookTube, I'm here today with my September wrap-up. I'm actually getting it out on time. I just have my list right here. Yeah, so let's get into it. I'm going to start with the comics because they were listed here first. Actually all but one of them are technically manga, so there's that. I've been reading a lot of manga lately. So I read Persona volumes 1 through 6, which is what my library had. I was kindly informed by Dices19 that there's actually 13 volumes, so I tracked them down. I hope to read them in October. Persona 4 is actually, it started as a video game, and I remember watching my brother play some of it. It's pretty cool, and I saw the mangas at the library and decided to give them a chance, and they are actually pretty good. They are written and drawn by Shuji Sogabe, and so basically we're following some teenagers solving crimes, murder specifically, and it has this kind of like science fiction aspect where they can go into TV. So they find this thing called the Midnight Channel, and basically the Midnight Channel is going to show the next victim of this crime. And if they go into the TV, there's a chance that they could save this person from actually dying. But while in there, the person who's featured on the Midnight Channel who is at risk of dying has to face like the shadow version of themselves. So part of their personality, or that they don't, that's not necessarily, I don't want to say good or bad, that's not necessarily something that they want to face. You know, we all have those things. So like, for example, one of the girls, she is supposed to take over the family business, and she's just like, but part of me doesn't want to do that. And she has to come to terms with it. Yeah, and they meet this little creature in there called Teddy, and I initially didn't like him, but eventually he grew on me and he became one of my favorite characters. So yeah, it's interesting, it's easy. I like that it's the first 5 volumes at least were very formulaic, and that, you know, you had the group of friends, they watch the channel, they go into the TV, they help the person, and then, you know, they come out of the TV and have a little moment. You know, one time they went camping, another time they're just having supper together, you know, just something a little fun. And at this point, so this is why I thought it was weird, volume 6, they have caught the murderer, but I guess there's still stuff going on. So we have to read the next 7 volumes to find out what that is. Okay, then I also read Ranma Half, volume 1 by Rumiko Takahashi, and this is an interesting story. It's about this young boy martial artist. I always say young boy. Like, personally, I'm 37, so like, he's a teenager, so he's a young boy to me. That makes sense. So yeah, so don't think like young. He's like this teenager dude initially goes off to China to train at a special martial arts place, and he falls into this special pond that means that when he gets wet, he turns into a girl, and he has to get wet again in order to turn back into a boy. And it's interesting the dynamic that brings about, as he constantly finds ways to get splashed and changed all the time. And he starts living with this family of girls who are also martial artists. And this one girl has to like defeat every boy in school every day before she can go to class. It's just kind of like nonsensical fun. It's good. I'm gonna talk about all the manga first, and then I'll talk about the only non-manga comic I read. Demoted to a teacher, the strongest sage raises an unbeatable class. I love these mangas that have these really long titles that are more of like just descriptions of what it's about as opposed to like some just random title. Yeah, so this is by Ichi Suzumori, and so this is about this fantasy world where their land is slowly being taken over by monsters, and their whole society is built on this war that they're fighting against them, and they have to battle with the monsters. And they had this sage, they used magic to do this, and magic and swords. So this sage who didn't like what his superiors had to say and do, and the superiors are just kind of, it's kind of like a royalty, like nepotism. It's just being passed along through different lines, and you know, there's class issues. You know, why should I listen to this lowly guy? Because even though he's speaking sense and, you know, all this stuff, but he's not royalty, so what does he have to offer? So he gets demoted to a teacher, so now he's got to train the next generation of fighters. It's just fun, and it's interesting the tactics that he uses. So there's one scene where he's pitting like the 3 weakest students against the 3 strongest students, and then like the weakest students win with the strategy that he gives them, and he explains, you know, why this happened. So it's kind of interesting twist on stuff there. And then I read really early manga by Yoshihiro Tatsumi. He has various collections. I read one, Abandoned the Old in Tokyo, and this one was called The Pushman and Other Stories, and they're basically like short stories, very adult themes. Most of these stories actually was interesting. I noticed featured abortions, which was interesting, especially because they were like done illegally and stuff like that, like what happened to the bodies and stuff. It's a lot about, you know, working class people and people on like the edge of society who aren't necessarily accepted but who are essential for society to keep running, like people who are working in the sewers and stuff. Yeah, so he's an interesting person. And then I read Monkey Mead by Juni, and this was really good. I really enjoyed this. I keep thinking about this comic too. So we got this kind of like dystopian world that is run by a corporation, so everything's is centered around like these energy drinks almost are some of them, and like the corporate overlords are like the royalty, and they run things, and but the side effect of some of the drinks or beverages or whatever they are, I call them energy drinks in my head. They're not actually energy drinks, but kind of gets the same kind of idea across, I think. But there's a side effect that it could like turn you into like this supernatural dead thing, zombie thing, and they're all just a bunch of short stories about this world. There's actually one really cool one where this guy drank the drink and he turned into this like Naruto type character, and there was like a almost like a direct reference, and he meets all these other characters, and there's like a Darth Vader and like a Thor and a Batman and a Santa Claus, I think was one of them. It was really quite funny. I enjoyed that comic. I'm gonna look for more by him. Okay, now onto the actual word, like just words. Gotta check that again. I don't think any of these have pictures. Just words. So, The Strange Scent of Saffron by Milena Babin. This book I really thoroughly enjoyed. This is just my notepad with my list of books on it, by the way. It's waving it around. Yeah, so this is about, how do I describe her? This woman who is, I believe she's the daughter of an immigrant, and I think that's an important part to the story. But she's kind of off, because she was so, it feels like she was deprived of socializing. So she knows how to live in the world. She's, you know, she's had a rough upbringing, so she knows how to get by, you know, without money and all that kind of stuff. But she's also kind of naive in the same way in that she doesn't really know how to socialize. So the story is she's running away from her uncle and her brother, who are just really horrible people to her, and she has a kind of a domesticated fox. I hesitate to say pet fox, but a domesticated fox that's with her. And it's interesting, we get some perspectives from the fox looking at her and talking about her. So the beginning of the story is she goes to this restaurant and she dines and dashes, and the restaurant owner then goes home, and she's comes to his house and he's like, yeah, I guess you can stay here, you know, sleep on the floor, and there's some food in the fridge if you want. And it's just like this weird relationship thing that they kind of help each other along. We find out, also it says on the back of the book, so it's not a spoiler, that he is dying of AIDS as well. So it's this really interesting dynamic between these two people. And I really thoroughly enjoyed it. Definitely a favorite book, contender of the year. Another one is The Sword of War by Babin. Another one as another contender for favorite book of the year. And this is it was compared to, and I think it's only compared to this book in that the plot, the overall general plot is kind of similar. It's compared to All Quiet on the Western Front, but this is the Vietnam War. So we are getting the perspective of a Vietnamese soldier who was on the opposite side of the whatever side the United States was on. I know the whole Vietnam conflict is really complicated, so they were on the other side of that. This guy fighting, and he's also a writer, and he was really young when he joined up. And the book is totally wacky with the timeline. And wacky is probably not the right word to use, but the timeline is definitely not linear. We're jumping back and forth. There's no chapter breaks or anything. You know, you'll get one perspective, one part where he's writing in the third person, and then another in the first person, and then I think the actual writer comes in a bit. So it's like, it sounds more complicated than it actually is. When you're reading it, it's more organic and it flows and it makes sense. So we're following him. If I was going to pit it linearly, the perspectives we get are him as a young boy, growing up with his father, who was an artist with mental health issues. I gotta play with something in my hands. I don't know what it is today. I just need to hold on to things and play with things and fidget and stuff. So that's what I'm doing. Sorry if it's distracting. Anyways, that was totally off. So we start with, it's, as I said, it's all over the place. So we do get him from a young boy growing up with his father, him falling in love as a older teenager, with this girl, going off to war, some of his experiences in the war and some of his experiences directly after the war, collecting dead bodies. That's the scene that it opens up with. And then him as like I guess a young adult, trying to write his story. And it is really good. I highly recommend it if you're interested at all in the Vietnam War. I'm not interested in the Vietnam War, but I was interested in reading this book and it was really good. I also read The Unit by Ninni Holmqvist. I don't know how the Q and V are supposed to pronounce, so that's what I'm saying. This was an interesting book. So basically in this world, all the single women over 50 without kids and all the single men without kids over 60 are put into this place called the Unit, and they are then, I can't remember the term they use. They're the people that can be used for experiments, or organ donations, and all sorts of medical experiments. But it's actually like quite a nice place. So everything's paid for. They don't have to worry about it. They get their own place. They can pursue any hobby they want. They have really nice restaurants and all this other kind of stuff. The stipulation is that you are expected to participate in certain experiments and make a final donation, which will end you. And we follow this woman as she, goes into this, why she's there, the friends she makes, the relationships she develops within it are the primary focus of it. And I was like, this actually seems like a nice place to be, but then you have this horror in the back of your mind that it's not voluntary. And that's the real horror of it. And I kind of want to spoil it because I want someone else to have read this so that we can talk about the ending, because it is upsetting but also not upsetting at the same time. Like, I kind of get it, but I would have been happy if it ended either way, being vague because I don't want to give spoilers. My battery's flashing at me, so I'm gonna stop here because I still have another few books to talk about and change batteries. So hopefully the angle hasn't changed too much. I just finished talking about the unit. Now I'm going to talk about another, what you call Snow Crash, a dystopian. It's cyberpunk, I think is the technical genre, but it's not a world I'd want to live in, I think. So anyway, Snow Crash is one of the, not the like early cyberpunk, but like an essential cyberpunk novel, I'd have to say. It's about, again, this whole new world, and I have to explain all these worlds. Anyways, it's a whole new world. Well, I guess not really. Talks about capitalism again. Corporations have basically taken over America, literally, like, where they own certain neighborhoods. And, like, the mafia is one of them. Yeah, that kind of stuff. And there's also this metaverse, and it's called the metaverse in Snow Crash, so, like, Facebook stole it from there. Facebook hopefully doesn't steal a lot of ideas from Snow Crash, because that would not be good. Anyways, there's this metaverse where it's like VR. You can go in and you're like your own person. You can build your own house and kind of like go around and socialize and trade information, and programmers can like access special features and stuff like that. So we follow one programmer hacker, they're called, and his name is Hero Protagonist. Yeah. And we follow him as he has to start solving this puzzle, because there's also this, I hesitate to call it a religion, because it's also mixed up in like corporations and immigration and politics and all that kind of stuff. This cult type thing, he has to infiltrate it and figure out what's going on. And we also follow YT. Her name is YT. And she kind of helps and has her own story as well. And I thoroughly enjoyed this. I say thoroughly, I shouldn't have said thoroughly. I mostly enjoyed this. I just wish that YT was older, because there's creepy whole sex thing with this older man, and I'm just like, why couldn't you just make her 20? It's not like school and being a teenager is part of her personality. Like, she could have been like at least 20 and it would have been less creepy and ooey gooey. You know what I mean? Hopefully. She doesn't, yeah. She doesn't need to be a teenager. I don't know why he had to make her a teenager. So that's the only ooh factor. But other than that, like, it talks a lot about religion, talks a lot about like the Sumerian language and using language to hack your brain. So it's really cool in that aspect. If you read Ready Player One, Ready Player One is a bad ripoff of Snow Crash. So there's that. That's what I felt when I read most of Ready Player One. I had to DNF it. I didn't like it. Because I was like, this is like Snow Crash, but not well done. If it had been well done, it would have been different, but yeah. So that's Snow Crash. I also feel like if you like the 3 Body Problem, you might also like Snow Crash. Okay. I read Dreadful Water by Thomas King, and I love Thomas King. I've read a lot of his nonfiction work. He did stuff, the first book I read by him was actually called The Truth About Stories, which is the CBC Massey lecture series that he did about writing and creating stories and the meaning of stories. And then I read The Inconvenient Indian. I just blinked on the name there for a second, which is a good brief history of indigenous people in North America. And then I read On the Back of the Turtle. I'm just listing off all his books here. And I really enjoyed that, and that was his first fiction book that I'd read. So Dreadful Water was... It's not... How do I say? It is a good mystery. It is very simply told, straightforward, you know, not a lot of thinking required. It still had that ooh-ah, you know, like the elements of mystery that you expect to find in mysteries are what it is. Like we have this the trope of the retired police officer coming back into, you know, solve the crime. We have the obligatory relationship. We even have a cat, which seems, I don't know if that's a trope in mystery, but it feels appropriate. And it wasn't bad for those things. It did those things very well. It was very kind of easy to read, very quick, well paced, you know, not a whole lot of extra unnecessary stuff. I say unnecessary, sometimes it's necessary, sometimes it's good to have, but this was like, didn't need it. It was just kind of like very straightforward story, very enjoyable. And the mystery, let me explain the mystery, not just about the kind of general vibe of the book. So the mystery is this indigenous tribe wants to set up this fancy casino hotel thing, but a dead body is found in one of the rooms before. I don't think it's a hotel actually. I think it is luxury apartments with a casino attached. Anyways, a dead body is found in one of the apartments, and they call in this retired police officer to help solve the crime, but also to kind of prove that the person that they think did it didn't do it. It's very, very, yeah. I want to continue on with the series. It's very good, but it's not outstanding, but it is perfect. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. Anyways, the book I'm currently reading, and I'm just about finished to wrap up, so I'm just going to include it here, is Trickster Drift by Eden Robinson. This is the second book. I didn't read any nonfiction. Sorry, that's weird. Just off on a tangent there looking at my list. So I read Trickster Drift, which is the second book in Son of a Trickster series. The first book is called Son of a Trickster, so that's what I'm going to call it. So in the first book we meet, I think his name's Jacob? Jared. His name is Jared. I knew it began with a J. So Jared, and he's this kind of rough kid with heart of gold. And he's like dealing drugs and getting drunk all the time, and but he's also like helping his elderly neighbors and trying to, you know, help out his father and his granddaughter or his niece or something like that, his father's granddaughter. It's complicated family relationship thing, but yeah. And then he finds out that he's got this kind of like supernatural, all the supernatural stuff going on. So in the second book we're following him. I don't think it's much of a spoiler to say that he's now a year sober. He's trying to go to college, so he's moved to British Columbia and you know, trying to make life happen, but of course, you know, the supernatural world isn't letting him take it easy. Yeah, I really enjoy. I dread the thing that's gonna happen because I know it's gonna be absolutely horrible. So that's why I kind of had to stop, because I was like, no, because this is like, I just enjoyed following this like little slice of life. You know, like there's, yeah, some supernatural stuff on, but it's not too bad. It's not too scary. There's a ghost helping him with algebra, like, you know, kind of stuff. And I'm just dreading this horrible event that's kind of just looming over him. So just, I want to continue, but I also want to keep Jared safe and not let my poor little baby get hurt. I know he's gonna come through it because there's a third book, so he has to get through it, but still, it's kind of, you know, I don't want him to go through any more hardships. The kid's had enough horrible life experiences to last more than one lifetime. Okay, I also had a DNF, but it's hard to explain this DNF, and that's why I want to talk about it, and that's Gut Symmetries by Jeanette Winterson, because I thoroughly enjoyed the writing of this book, but I didn't see the point in continuing to read 100 pages when it wasn't compelling me to for plot or character reasons. I kind of figured it's the story, like it could have been a lot shorter and gotten things done. So the story is this woman starts an affair with this man, meets his wife, and then starts having an affair with the wife. but it's not a plot-driven novel. It is very much just more of, I feel it's more of an experiment in her writing with kind of like this plot that has to be shoved in there. I think that was my problem with it. So it's like I think it will be a hard DNF in that I probably won't pick it up. I read 145 pages of it. And I think I got as much as I'm going to get out of the book as I want. That makes sense. But I also am going to keep the book on my shelf and think about it fondly because it was really well written. I just didn't see any ideas or plot or character interest for me, aside from just the writing. And it needs more than just that for me to continue reading. I do believe that is it. Yeah, let me know what you've read in September and if you've read any of these and your thoughts on them, and thank you for watching.